Did you know that Kentucky was this close to leaving the United States and joining the Spanish Empire? Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm a Kentuckian learning a little bit more about our history. Today, June 1st, we celebrate Kentucky Statehood, but getting here was a pretty wild ride. It all started with a bang in December of 1784. Following an Indian raid on Logan Station, a frontier militia leader named Colonel Benjamin Logan called a meeting in Danville. The frontier settlers were furious about their lack of defense, distant courts, and incredibly messy land laws. They decided it was finally time to petition Virginia for statehood. But Virginia and the U.S. government didn't exactly make it easy. Over the next 8 years, Kentucky leaders were forced to hold 10 separate conventions in Danville just to hammer out the terms of their independence. Virginia kept passing enabling acts with heavy demands, insisting that the new territory take on a share of the federal debt and completely protect existing Virginia land grants. But even when they finally got Virginia to agree to the terms, the U.S. Congress dragged its feet. Congress briefly approved admission in 1788 under the Articles of Confederation, but immediately rescinded the offer as the country transitioned to the new U.S. Constitution. And while politicians stalled in the East, the frontier economy was suffocating. Spain had closed the Mississippi River to American shipping in 1784, cutting off Kentucky farmers from their only viable trade routes to the markets in New Orleans. Adding insult to injury, U.S. negotiator John Jay was actually willing to waive American navigation rights on the river for 25 years. Frustrated and economically desperate, some Kentucky leaders decided to take matters into their own hands. Leaders such as General James Wilkinson. He was an ambitious, chronically broke Revolutionary War veteran who saw the closed river not as a crisis, but maybe as a massive opportunity. In the summer of 1787, Wilkinson loaded a flatboat full of tobacco and floated straight down to New Orleans to hold a secret meeting with the Spanish governor, Esteban Miró. In one of the most brazen acts of treason in early American history, Wilkinson struck a deal. He officially swore an oath of allegiance to the Spanish crown. In return, the Spanish dubbed him Agent 13. They granted him a lucrative yearly pension and gave him an exclusive duty-free monopoly to trade his goods down the river. But there was a catch. Wilkinson had to return home to Kentucky and convince his fellow Kentuckians to break away from the U.S. and form an independent buffer state under the protection of Spain. Wilkinson returned to Danville flush with Spanish silver, some of which was literally smuggled up the Mississippi River, hidden inside barrels of sugar and coffee, and began buying influence. He used his newfound wealth to rally frustrated settlers, arguing that the American government had abandoned them. Soon, other powerful Kentucky figures were pulled into the web. Kentucky delegate John Brown began holding his own backdoor talks with Diego de Gardoqui, the Spanish minister to the United States. Gardoqui made the proposition crystal clear. If Kentucky declared its total independence from America, Spain would immediately open the river to the farmers. All this backdoor maneuvering became known as the Spanish Conspiracy. It was a dangerous game of frontier politics that could have completely altered the map of North America. The region was deeply divided between wealthy planters and small farmers over how to handle the crisis, but the majority of the pioneers kept pushing for American statehood, convention after convention, refusing to let the plot succeed. The conspiracy ultimately fizzled out when the federal government took serious steps to bring the territory into the Union. And despite widespread rumors of his treason, James Wilkinson was never officially caught in his lifetime. And finally, the new U.S. Congress passed an act on February 4th, 1791, officially consenting to Kentucky's admission. In April of 1792, the 10th and final Danville Convention met and drafted the state's very first constitution. And on June 1st, 1792, the paperwork became official. Kentucky formally entered the Union as the 15th state. Happy Statehood Day, Kentucky.